record at the beginning of the lecture. How's that for me remembering how to do my job? Okay. It's all dad jokes from me. That's really how things work out. Okay, so let me open up a VS Code in window. All right. So let's do, here, let me just create a new project. Here, actually, I'll do it this way. All right, it's going to do it over there. 1 second. So, okay, this is better. All right. So first thing I'm going to talk about is just to go over callbacks a bit. Somebody tell me what a callback is.
So a function is invoked by another function. Or
Good.
in.
I like
By or
that.
in, I guess.
I like that. So a callback is a function that is called by another function when the circumstances that we need to hit are hit. So let's create a short array. Okay, so I'm going to say const students equals, and we'll just do Nico. I can spell. Okay. So just 4 students. All right, so we've got our students. So, and I know you've done this, and that is that you've created your own for each. So let's create our own for each function. So what I want to do is I want to go through each of these items in this array. So I'm going to create a my for each equals and what I want to do is apply a function to each item in that array. So what should I do first if that's what I want to do? I know I have an array and I know I need to apply a function. Let's create a callback function here. Okay, so that's my callback function. So I want to run this callback function for every member of this array. How do I set up this function to do that? What should I do first?
You want to iterate through the array.
Okay. So what do you want me to type?
For
bracket Okay.
Const element, or something shorter,
I like element.
of array.
All right.
Curly's.
Here, let me say. Okay. Curly's.
Actually, ARR should be students, no?
Well, I want this to work for any array, not just the students array.
Okay.
So
Oh yeah, right.
I want to make
So-
it reusable. Okay, so, all right, we're going to go and iterate. What are we going to do for each element?
Callback function and then put element in there.
Okay, so we'll do a callback. I'm not going to put callback function because again, I want this to be reusable. So I want to be able to use this with any array and any callback function. So I'm just going to say callback, and I'm going to not callback func. I'm just going to do this, and I'll do element. What do I need to do to finish off this perfect piece of code? What am I missing?
You need the parameters.
What should I put in for parameters?
Just the callback and the array.
Okay, I'm going to do, I'm just going to do it R and then callback because I guess it doesn't really matter what order we run them in, but here we go. So what is the callback function in this case? When is it going to be called?
After the iteration through the
Okay, so let's run this and see what happens. Okay, so we're going to call my for each, and I'm going to pass in students, and I'm also going to pass in callback func. All right. So is this going to work? What do people think?
I don't think you're logging anything right now.
I think I am. Let's find out.
Oh yeah, you are. Sorry.
I did type console.log, so something should get logged. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to have happen. Is everybody clear on what just occurred there? Right, so I have, in this case, an array, and I wanted to call a callback function against each item in that array. And so I created this callback function. There is another way for me to do this, and that is actually with an anonymous function. Okay, and I could call it my for each students. And instead of putting in the callback func, I can actually just put in the func right here. Item that arrow console dot log item. And that will give me the same thing as above. So 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Both of these are relatively simple to deal with. We all cool so far? Yes, yes. I saw at least one person nod. That means you all completely understand this. Okay, so callbacks are important. Let's think about a JavaScript program. Generally, most JavaScript programs are going to be written for a browser. So think about the last time you went to a website that was interactive. Okay, let's actually open up a new window. And I'm just going to go to, I don't know, let's go to, which one's good? Which one's good? Let's go to YouTube. You can see all of my weird YouTube choices here. Okay, so I've got, this is an interactive site written with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This is probably written with Angular, which we're not going to be teaching, but all of the front-end frameworks do the same sort of thing. So this is obviously a site that has some interactivity. So for instance, if I click on, yeah, for some reason I've been watching Time Team a lot. If you don't know what Time Team is, look it up. It's actually a lot of fun. So I'm going to click this. And what's happened is a JavaScript function has just run. Now think about the programs that you've written. Could you write a program that would do this when I clicked on a button? This is just a filter, right? So we're just filtering, would be an array, and it's filtering that array, and it's filtering based on the button I clicked up here. What do we need to do in order to get that to work? Well, what we've actually used there is a callback function. All right, so there is on that page a callback function that will fire when I click on that element. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so let's start by thinking about why we need to have asynchronous code. JavaScript runs, how does a JavaScript program run? How did this JavaScript program run? Right here, what happened in what order?
Top to bottom?
Top to bottom. Okay, so first thing we did is we created a list of students and we stored that in a variable called students. We then defined a function. So here's the definition of the function. We then defined a second function. And then finally, we invoked the first function with the list. And well, at least up here, we called the second function here, I'm just adding a new function, which is invoked immediately. So we're running top to bottom.
Sorry, I just want to ask, when you said, when you clicked YouTube,
yeah,
why is it specifically a callback function and not just a function that ran?
I'll tell you, because if we had written YouTube where everything just happens at once, that means we couldn't interact with it, right? If I run a program, a JavaScript program from the top to the bottom, it takes milliseconds for that program to run. If I don't click the button in the 3 milliseconds that it takes for that program to run, I can't click it. So we have to have a way of storing that in a location that we can call later. Okay. Let's actually talk about blocking. Okay. All right. So if JavaScript runs from the top to the bottom, what happens if it takes more than a few milliseconds for something to happen? So I'm gonna create another program here. I'm gonna create something that goes 100,000 times. Okay. I'm gonna loop through something and have it run 100,000 times. Okay. So let's do for let I equals 0. I is less than stop. And then I plus plus. And then we are just going to say console here. Actually, we'll do, yeah, console.log new state. Did I just freak anybody out by using the word new?
No, it was the typo thing.
Okay, well that's fine. I've been typing for a very long time, and yet I still look at my fingers. My typing teacher is rolling over right now. Okay. So what is going to happen when I run this?
It's printing out a date 100,000 times, or?
Yeah. Okay, let's do that. It's fun to do something 100,000 times. And it helps if I save the file before I run it. There we go. So as you can tell, it still ran incredibly fast. That was what, 3 seconds maybe? Wow, these new Mac M1s are fast. Okay, so I've run that and it took a while to run. Let's actually time it, okay? So I'm going to do console.time. We're going to say blocking, and I'm going to do a console.time end. So there's more to console than console.log. It has a bunch of really useful features. This is going to start a timer. It's going to run my program, and then it's going to tell me how long it took to run. Okay. So let's do the same thing again. There we go. 3.3 seconds. Okay. What was happening during those 3.3 seconds?
Each date was locked to the console, like 100,000 times.
Yeah, and it took a while, and it makes sense that it's going to take a while to do that, right? Computers are super fast, but you know, asking anybody to do something 100,000 times is going to it's going to take a while. 3 seconds, I'm not even going to complain about that. But during those 3 seconds, what else can I do during those 3 seconds? 3 seconds is forever in the time span of the internet. The average client will wait, I've been told, 3 seconds for a page to load before they abandon and go away. So if it takes more than 3 seconds for your page to load, you're having a problem. Actually, if it takes more than half a second, you're still going to lose people.
I was about to say anything like more than a second, that definitely already have Control W out of that. Honestly.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, I don't want to wait for anything, which is hilarious. as a side note, when I was going to university, they were showing a sort of a demo of a very early version of the internet, and they were printing out a picture. It was a tiny picture, and you could actually see the picture being drawn line by line by line by line. Took 12 seconds or so for the entire picture, which was the headshot of the math division professor. It was crazy. So yeah, things are a lot faster now. Okay, so while this was going on though, I have blocked JavaScript. I can't do anything else during those 3 seconds, right? Even if I wanted to, I couldn't do anything because we have yet to get to the end. I'm going to put in some console log statements. And this will say 4. And this is going to say so I'm going to run this one more time. There's no point in me actually putting in that before statement, but you could see that that after statement has occurred after those 3.3 seconds, or in this case, 2.8 seconds. It's getting faster. So we're running the code line by line by line. We get to this for loop. Okay, I've got to run. How many times do I have to run? 100,000 times. What do? I console.log a new day. Okay, I'm going to do that. 3 seconds later, it reads the next line. Okay, next, I'm going to run console.log after. Okay, that's kind of cool, but we need to figure a way around that. What if I wanted to do something else while I was printing off the date in the background? What could I do? And this is where asynchronous functions come in. Okay. So let's create another file. I'm going to call this set timeout. So set timeout is a function that is available in JavaScript. You're not actually going to use it all that often in real programs, but it's actually really good for giving examples of things. So let me just run a set timeout. Set timeout. Set timeout takes 2 parameters. Actually takes 1 parameter. If you actually have a look here, saying set timeout handler, timer handler, okay. Timeout, that question mark there, it means it's an optional value. So I can pass in 1 parameter. I can pass in more than 1 parameter. I can also pass in any number of arguments as well that would get passed to the handling function. I hate that. All right. If we do get disconnected, just reconnect, please, and we'll figure out what's the heck's going on. That should not have happened. Didn't happen last week. Why did it happen this week? Oh well, never mind. Okay, so we're going to run set timeout. What do I want to do during the set timeout? I want to run a function. Let's create an anonymous function and fn tab. Woohoo! And in this, we are going to say console. Yeah, clg. Oh no, not that. clg. Hello. And we are going to wait 500 milliseconds. Number is milliseconds. Okay. So if I run set timeout, you see that it here, let me make this a larger number because half a second is too fast. Okay, we wait 5 seconds. Then it says hello. So we have our callback function here, which is this anonymous function that console.logs hello. And we have this 5,000 milliseconds. Okay, so question for you. So what order, when I run this program, what order are these going to show up?
I think I run first, I run after, and then hello.
Right. But remember, back here, everything ran in order. Just to introduce some doubt into the situation. You are, of course, correct. Because what I've done is I've taken, and set timeout is an asynchronous, actually, technically it's a synchronous function. It's the parameter that's passed in that becomes asynchronous. So this function here, this console.log hello, is asynchronously run after those 5,000 milliseconds. Okay. So let's look at something else. No, not that. And just okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the same function, except remove that optional parameter. What order are the messages going to come in now? Yes, it is a trick question. Anyone?
Now
think
maybe top to bottom.
Okay, let's see if it works. That way.
Question.
Yes, go for it.
Does set timeout have a default timer? Like, because it's a callback that's already instituted within JavaScript, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're all still gonna come 5,000 milliseconds, aren't they? After it's called, like when you have to add something.
Well, I haven't added 5,000 in here, right? This
Oh,
is
yeah,
now
yeah.
just going to run this one parameter.
Right.
So let's have a look. Okay. And it helps if I save it. I'm embarrassed. Okay, here we go. One more time with feeling. So you'll notice that the hello still appears afterwards. And that is because of the way asynchronous code runs. By default, a JavaScript application is going to start at the top and run each line of code. It's going to get to the bottom, it's going to finish. But what's happening here is that we're starting at the top. It runs this line of code. Okay, I run first. It runs this set timeout and says, okay, set timeout has this function within it. It's asynchronous because that's the way it works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and run it after I've run all the synchronous code. So it takes it and it puts it after what we call a JavaScript event loop. It takes it and puts it into the loop. So what's happening is we're running through the program where we now register this callback, we put it in the event loop. After it's run all the synchronous code, it then checks the event loop. It checks each function within that event loop and asks for each function, is this going to run yet? Each function is going to have a sort of a parameter when we're going to run. It might be on clicking a button. Has somebody clicked the button yet? Yes, no. If the answer is no, then I'm not going to run this function yet. If the answer is yes, then I am going to run that function. Okay. One more, because, you know, we can't do too many examples here.
Sorry, John, just a quick question.
Yeah.
How do you know when something is async? I mean, without it being like obvious, you know, like if it's clicking a button, then you would know, or if you're saying set timeout, you would know. But like if you were looking at somebody's batch of code, how would you know that that function is
batch of code? The default is that everything's going to run synchronously. So what you have to do is you have to look for callbacks. Callbacks are a clue that something is going to happen asynchronously. Not necessarily. If you can run callbacks like I showed in blocking synchronously, but if you run it synchronously, it just locks up your entire program. You can't do anything. But now I've taken it out of the synchronous flow of the code, and I'm running it afterwards. I'm running it after, and it's going to check. Has this condition, that's the word I was looking for, has this condition happened? In this case, there is no condition. Here, actually, let's do this. Another one. Okay, so now we're going to throw both of these into the event loop. My friends, I'm going to stop sharing and restart the Zoom conference. I apologize. Can you all just rejoin in like 3 seconds? Sorry about that. Record again. Yay. All right, let me reshare. Okay. All right. So how are people feeling about that, right? So we know that synchronous code will always run before asynchronous code. We have our synchronous code, it runs top to bottom. The asynchronous code, set timeout here is technically synchronous. What it's doing is it's setting the asynchronous code to run, and it's setting it with a condition. Okay. That is cool. I think it is, at least. Okay. So we've got a way of running code afterwards, but we want a way to interact with anything that happens in that code. Let's set, here, I'm going to create another file. I'm going to call this, so we want to return data out of our functions, out of our asynchronous callback. That's going to be a little bit harder to do. Okay, so let me create some data. So I've created an object. This object has two parameters, two entries here. We've got name, which is a string John, and we've got humor with a string bad. So I'm always down on myself, but I shouldn't be. So let's change that. Let's change that, and let's change it inside a set timeout. Okay. I'm going to create another a set timeout here. I'm going to run an anonymous function, and that anonymous function is going to say teacher dot humor equals, and I have to put that. Okay, and I want that to run in 1,000 milliseconds. How do I get that information? If I console.log teacher.humor, what's this going to say? Knowing what you know now. So explain to me what's going to happen in what order?
It's gonna say your humor is bad.
Right.
Before.
So we're setting this object here. We are registering a set timeout. It's going to change teacher.humor to good, and that's going to run after 1,000 milliseconds. It's then going to synchronously run console.log teacher.humor. Okay. Let's create another set timeout. And let's have this run after 1,100 milliseconds. Now what's going to happen?
It's going to log the original teacher object and then the one with the where its humor is bad afterwards or good afterwards.
Okay, let's see if this works. Great. So what this is showing is that the data is changing over time.
Could you have put the second console log inside the first set timeout after teacher.humor equals good?
Yes, I absolutely could. So let's, if I console, we'll just say, okay, and if I run that again, so, but that makes sense, right? So if I do the teacher.humor, I'm changing it here. and this is another way to think about it. This is synchronous code. This is synchronous code. This is running inside a asynchronous code, but it's synchronous within that asynchronous call, right? So even though we're waiting 1,000 milliseconds for these two lines to run, these are then going to run synchronously. But we don't always have the leisure or the, we can't always just set a timer to higher than another timer. We want to find a way to get data out of our callback. Okay. So let's go back. Let's actually put everything here inside another function. Okay. I'm going to create this. I'm going to create a higher order function. It's a higher order function.
The function that holds the callback?
A higher order function in this case is basically you can think of a higher order function is a function that calls another function or returns another function. It's a function that operates on another function. Okay, so here I have just put everything inside this higher order function. Okay. So I've got the const teacher, I've got this initial set timeout that waits 1,000 milliseconds. And then I've got this console.log teacher.humor. But what if I want to get this out of the information or out of this function? Right, so let's just here, and what I'm going to do, actually, I can get rid of that. Because that'll just confuse people. And I am going to just do that, okay. So now let's run higher order function. So when I run this code, what's going to occur? Tell me the order in which things happen.
I think bad inside good. Good. What happened last time?
Yeah. All I've done is I've put all of the code here inside another function, and I'm running that function. Make sure I've saved it. Yes, I have. Okay. There we go. So hopefully nothing there surprised anybody, right? So the same sort of thing happened. But what if I want to do something with that new information? What if I want to deal with this piece of data here? We know that if I run console.log teacher.humor outside of even this higher order function, and as a matter of fact, it's not even going to access it. So you could write because of scope. So this is creating a new scope, and everything within these curlies only knows about, like, things outside these curlies don't know what's happening inside the curlies. So we know this console.log occurs. It happens immediately. We could see that from bad showing up first. But I want to do something with the good. All right. So luckily, I can do something. I can pass something into this higher order function. I can pass a callback in. Okay, what's this callback going to be? Well, let's create it. Okay, matter of fact, let's do it above this higher order function. So I'm just going to say const callback func equals okay, and we will pass in a teacher, and we will console.log teacher dot humor. Okay, so I've created this callback function. So now I want to use this callback function, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a new line in here. I'm going to run the callback. Run the callback here. I'm going to pass in the teacher. And one more thing I need to do. Now, when I run this higher order function, I need to pass a parameter into it. I need to pass this callback. What's the name of the callback in this case? Callback function. So I'm passing this function into this function, the higher order function, and then I'm running it. So let's get rid of that for a second, just so it doesn't confuse us. And I'm also going to get rid of that. Okay. So, and I'm going to put just to make this completely clear. Perfect. So I can then take the data that has happened when the callback function is fired, and I can use that. I can use it by passing in another function that takes that information. This is within the, even though this is registered synchronously, it's still being passed into this asynchronous function and therefore is run asynchronously. And then I can do something with that data. And this is a pattern you're going to see a lot in JavaScript. Callbacks are a huge thing. You're going to pass information into callbacks that will happen when circumstances occur. So after a certain number of milliseconds, or if I click on a button in YouTube, we want something to occur then. It happens in the callback. How are people feeling about that? I saw a thumb and a nodding head. You guys are awesome. Okay.
So if the callback is inside an if statement, is that considered asynchronous too? Because it only happens if.
If so, where would the if be here? Outside this set timeout or within the set timeout?
I'm not sure. It's just that you said that, like, if in the case of YouTube, if you click the button, something happens, right? Right. Is that considered asynchronous? It will still have, okay.
It's going to happen asynchronously. What we need to do is we need to wait until the button is clicked. Once the button is clicked, the action occurs. It does not occur until that action. So an event, we call these events, an event occurs. What is the event in this case? It's clicking on the link in YouTube. All right. You guys are awesome. I'm ahead of schedule. which is weirding me out because I've gone long twice in a row already. So tell you what, let's take a 10-minute break. Let's take an 11-minute break just so we can start at 5 after. How does that sound to everybody? Great, great. So I'll see everybody. I'll be here if you want to ask me a question, but don't feel like you need to. Go stand up, say hello to your loved ones, pet your dog. Pet your wife. One of those. Oh. Yeah, I think I may have broken Zoom, so I apologize if we get kicked out at every 40 minutes. I'm asking people to look into it for me. I think I know what happened.
Could also just switch everybody to a Discord server and like live share or screen share.
We could do things. It's I've not done a screen recording on that. See, it's gonna happen in 10 minutes. All right, everybody. Well, that's good. It's good timing for this because I could just restart it again. Okay. Contact my IT team to upgrade to Zoom Pro, but I had Zoom Pro. All right. All right, everyone. Let's do the disconnect reconnect tango, and I'll see you all in a minute or so. It's a good time to do it. Anyone who hasn't joined yet, we're gonna have to do this stuff. So I'll see you all in a couple minutes. And go happy. I've started the recording. There will be at least three three links for recordings, but that's okay. Okay, all thank you very much for your patience. Next thing, let's do a stupid coder trick. All right, because stupid coder tricks are fun. So let me share once again. Okay. Super. Let me just close that and close that. All right. This is a little bit weird, but it's going to be. There's a reason I'm doing this. So we're going to create a. Let's do that again. Your rename. Create something called sleep sort. Okay. We all know how to sort an array, right? Arrays have this function called sort. So let me just grab a bunch of numbers here. I'm going to create an array. So how would I sort this array so from the lowest number to the highest number? Anyone?
Dot sort.
Let's give that a go. So let's do so what you're saying is array dot sort like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So
I think you might be right. Let's just make sure that we're
or otherwise we can do the bubble sort kind of a thing.
and we'll just do this. So let's just make sure that Jang is correct. So node sleep sort. And that's not quite in order. Why is that not in order? This is actually, this is interesting. Why am I getting 1, 0, 1006, 2, 310, 3630? Why is that?
Yeah, I hate this method for that. I think it just looks at the first number and sorts it based on that. So if you have like, you know, a case of like 1006, it's only looking at the one.
So the reason it's only looking at the one is it turns everything into a string. And alphabetically, this is sorted alphabetically rather than numerically. So we can go in there and fix that. We'd have to put in a method in here that will take each item in the array and then turn, you know, coerce it into a number. But there's actually a sneaky way of doing this. I don't recommend doing this for real, but I will say that potential employers love sort. I've received sort as a coding challenge. I bombed it, by the way, because I always just used sort before that. So I made sure I knew how to do a bubble sort before my next interview. So let's create a function. We're going to call it sort. And sleep sort is just going to take an array. We'll just say R. I'm running into the it's difficult to name things problem. Okay, so it's going to take an array, which is this array up here. And what I want to do is I want to go through that and so we'll do a for loop. We'll go const num of R. All right, and what I'm just going to do a console.log num. Okay, and then I'm going to put sleep sort array. So this isn't actually doing anything particularly wild. All it's doing is just going through the array and having those items show up one at a time. So if I run sleep sort, there we go. It's going through that array, but it's not changing the order. So I want to change the order. Luckily, we know a function that will change the order of these things. And it's something I was speaking about earlier. I was talking about stupid okay. What does this do?
It'll use the number as the time.
Yeah. Will this sort it for me?
Yeah.
So it works. Of course, I had to wait 3.630 seconds in order to get the last entry. Heaven forbid if I put like millions of entries in this array. So don't ever use this sort method. But the reason I'm showing this to you is actually to think about this. What we're doing is we are setting a number of asynchronous functions to fire. And they're going to fire once a condition is met. The condition being the number of milliseconds that have passed. So after 0 milliseconds, the 0 callback happens, it fires, and the console.log runs. And then it continues on throughout the function until we get to the end. Please, please, please never do that. But this is stupid coder tricks. Hopefully this helps you to understand. We're taking all of the functions. In this case, this anonymous function, we are putting them all out of the regular synchronous flow. We're putting into the asynchronous flow. And they are all going to continue to be checked to see if the condition that needs to happen happens. And if it happens, it runs the console log. Okay. So set timeout is pretty good for explaining things, but it is not actually something you're going to use a lot in your coding career. Something you will use, however, especially if you get into writing games, set interval, right? So set timeout will time something out. Set interval, on the other hand, will continue to occur. So it's going to rerun a function after a certain number of seconds. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to say let iteration equal 0. And I'm putting this outside of this function. So const function. And or actually, I don't even need to do that. Let's just run set interval. And set interval is very similar to set timeout. It's got the same signature. So we have a callback. We're going to have that callback. Inside the callback, I am going to and then we are going to have that run every 1,000 milliseconds. Are people comfortable with the template literal that I've used here? Backticks, okay, and using $ curlies inside, great. Is everybody comfortable with the idea of plus plus? I love it when you all nod. This is great. So when I run this, what is going to occur?
Going to increase the number by every 1,000 milliseconds.
Okay, let's check that out. There we go. Okay. When's this going to stop?
Never.
Not good.
Well, I hope it stops at some point. It'll stop when I just stop the program. So, but if I hadn't done that, it would have continued until I rebooted my computer. I spilled a coffee on it, which happened to me, by the way, once. Funny story. Before my very first class that I taught, I spilled coffee on my laptop. It was a fun day. You know how hard it is to teach computer science without a laptop? So we've got the set interval. This is going to be more useful to you. So it's going to run this, and it's going to run it every 1,000 milliseconds. Okay, great. So what if I want to stop it? Let's, what should I do if I want it to stop after, say, 10 iterations?
Use a while loop.
Use a while loop. Can you elaborate?
Actually, no, I can't. I don't know. It's just
yeah, a while loop is not what we want to do here.
I don't know if there's some way you could yeah,
Okay.
never mind.
So
There's gotta be a way you can do it, but
all right. So
is there no argument built into set interval?
There is actually, or it's not really a an argument in set interval. So what I can actually do, set interval ID equal to this. So remember when I said that a function always returns a value? Set interval will return a value. It will return a value that is equal to the timer ID that it sets internally. Okay, so, and we can actually have a look at this. Matter of fact, what I'm going to do.
oh wait, actually, sorry, I do know a way. If you just use set timeout. So then if you're gonna iterate by going for const like I of like whatever thing you're iterating through, and then you assign X outside of that. So if you say like let X equal 1,000, and then with each time inside of that thing, you X is plus equal to 250. So then it'll just keep going by the value of X. Does that make sense? So then you would just add the while loop inside of that, and then you'd say while X is less than like 500,000 or whatever you want the time limit to be. This might not make sense if I'm not like typing it on the screen, I guess.
Yep, I think that's the case because I'm still confused about what you were talking about, Robert. But thank you for your input. I appreciate it.
I'll send you a thing.
Okay, so all we need to do to stop this loop from occurring is run clear interval, and we're going to run clear interval, and we just pass it the interval ID, and it will stop this from running. What's the problem here?
If I to stop.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Yeah, just when to stop. I mean, when we will invoke this thing. Clear interval.
So what should I do in order to run it, say, after 10? I want to clear the interval after 10 iterations. Do I have access to iteration outside here? I do. If I did something like if iteration would that work?
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
Right.
Well, let's see what happens. I can't wait. No. It does not happen. It continues past 10. Why did it continue past 10?
Because the set intervals in the event loop. And so it's happening after the conditional on line 7.
Yeah. What is the order of operations here? What occurs when? So the first thing, obviously, we're going to set this variable to 0. We're then going to register this, which will run set interval and add it to the event loop. This happens outside of the event loop. So this is going to run synchronously. So it's going to run this, and then it's going to run this. Iteration will never triple equal 10 because it's running synchronously, and synchronously iteration equals 0. So this is going to continue until the coffee incident again. So what else could I do in order to get this to run properly?
Can we pass this inside the callback?
Yes, that is exactly it. So I'm going to add this if here. I'm going to just, we know this doesn't run, but I'm going to copy it out anyways. So now we're checking the iteration within the asynchronous function. So remember that all the code that's within an async function, which this callback is, will run synchronously. So it is updating iteration, and then it's checking. So the first time this runs, it's going to say console.log, the current iteration is, the first time it's going to be 0 because that's what iteration is here. It returns the 0 and then adds 1 to it. It then checks here, it's going to say if iteration, which at this time is equal to 1, triple equals 10, that is not happening. So it's not going to run this clear interval. And it's going to keep running until that happens.
I just have a question about clear interval.
Yes.
How are we able to call it if it's not defined?
Clear interval is a function like set interval, right? I didn't define set interval. Set interval is built into JavaScript. Set interval and clear interval are both set into JavaScript. In actuality, what I can do here is, better yet, sorry, in
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we do like, can we put like a condition inside the callback, like if it's equal to 10, then break? Can we do?
Break. So we could do that. We could do that, but that's not very good on a memory management standpoint, because if we do break out of that loop, then the interval still exists. The interval will continue to run. It won't show because you've removed, like, it's not doing anything anymore, but it will continue to run and it will use up your resources. Now, a single set interval is not going to use up many resources, but over time, you're going to start noticing memory leaks. That's one of the dangers of JavaScript, is that unless you're very careful, you have to make sure that everything that you're no longer using, you delete it rather than just leave it around. it's amazing how slow an app will get if it's not tidy. Sort of like my desk, which is definitely not tidy right now. Okay, so let's see what's going to happen here. Great. So the ID is 2. So in actuality, the interval ID is just a number. It's just the number 2. But if I run this again, it stopped at 9. Is anybody surprised that it stopped at 9? You're all good people. You know what you're doing. Okay, so if I run this again, I'll get a different ID, or maybe not. Doesn't matter. You don't know what the ID is going to be. In this case, it looks like it's always 2, but that's fun. So you can run a number of these set intervals. Set interval, again, is useful. You're going to end up using this in real programs, unlike set timeout, which I have never used in a real program. All right.
Oh, I messaged you the while loop thing I was talking about with set timeout.
Okay, I can't wait. Hold on. Let me.
It technically works.
I
probably not.
You.
That's still probably a better way to do it, but I'm just saying it's possible. Okay, I'm not.
Everything is possible, Robert. There are a million ways to write every program, so don't sweat it. While set timeout. Yeah, that'll work. But that's not a great way to do it. Yes, no, that absolutely does work, but I wouldn't be happy running it like that. Set interval is a better way, I believe, on running that. But that's good. Please keep sending me different ways of doing things. I always learn something from every class. Okay. All right, the last thing I have to show you today is something else that's going to be useful for you, and that is come on, new file. So Node has a way of interacting with files on your machine, which is great because otherwise you'd have to make sure all of your data was inside the code that you've written already. That's not necessarily what you want to do. So let's, what we're going to do is we are going to read a file and we're going to see if we can pull it out. So what I want to do is I actually want to use a feature. Here, let's just new window. And I love looking at the documentation. So node. Okay. So I'm going to use this file system module with that happens within Node. This is built into Node, and I can use this. This doesn't work inside browser-based JavaScript. This is just a Node thing. Because for whatever reason, they don't want people who make websites give them the ability to manipulate files on your machine. That's actually a really good thing. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to have a look at fs dot, where is it? Read file. Okay, great. So let's have a look at this. Read file takes a path, an optional options or an array of options, and a callback. A lot of callbacks today. Okay, The options are either an object or a string. Okay, that's good. The encoding, flag, a signal, and callback's going to be a function. This is asynchronously reads the entire contents of a file. So this is an asynchronous function. Why do you think we want to have an asynchronous read file function? Why wouldn't we want to just read the file synchronously?
Some files just take too long to read.
Yep.
Would you want to scan the file also maybe to see if it doesn't have like viruses or something? And just not open it immediately?
We're just worried that it's going to take a while. So, you know, if I write a file with like 1 million words in it, that's going to take time. And just like earlier on when I was counting to 100,000 and it took 3.3 seconds, I don't want to wait 3.3 seconds. I want to have JavaScript still do things while it's reading the file in the background. There is a read, oh, shut up. There is a read file sync. Let me see if I can find it, hold on. Yeah, so there is a synchronous option that will just read it right away, but that's a blocking operation. So we don't want to have blocking operations occurring. So let's actually do this both ways. So first thing I'm going to do, even though it's built into Node, I still have to require it. Okay, so I'm going to require this. And what I'm going to do, I've got here, let's just create a new file. And I'm going to call this index.html. And the reason I'm going to using this index.html is I can use this lorem snippet to create a word with there's 1,000 words in this file right now. This is like, it's not Latin, it's actually archaic French, I've been told. If you've not run into lorem ipsum before, this is just dummy text. Oftentimes when you're designing a website and the product owners haven't decided what the wording is going to be, you need to have something in order to see what it looks like. So lorem ipsum is something that is we use a lot. So here, if I go view, hold on, there we go, view word wrap. So there, I've got that file in there. Okay, so let's read the file. I want to read that file. Okay, so we're going to do fs dot read file sync. Okay, and it takes the path, so dot slash index.html, and here we'll just give this to a variable. Okay, and then we're going to run file content. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, that's weird. So what's happened here is that read file and read file sync both actually just send you the decoded stream of information. It's in hex. So I actually need to pass in a second parameter, which is this, the encoding that I want, which in this case is going to be UTF-8. Always, if there's a somewhere to put text encoding, put UTF-8. It will make your life easier, especially if you're dealing with Microsoft devices, because they like using weird Microsoft formatted stuff. So let's run this again. And there we go. We've got our output. So what I've done is I've pulled in the information from this index.html file, and now I can access it. So I'm going to use instead of doing it this way, I want to use the asynchronous version. So here, let me just get rid of that. Synchronous. Okay. And before I get cut off, because I will absolutely forget. Hold on, where is it? Zoom. Mazda commercials. Okay. All right, everyone. I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment, and we're going to do the same tango. Last time, I promise. I'll get this fixed before next week. Okay, so I will see everybody in 2 minutes.